Call the January 19th regular meeting of the Beavercreek Township Trustees to order. First order will be to pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sometimes these machines are wonderful, and sometimes they have perfect picture. That's all right. Have an agenda before us. Do I have any additions or modifications to the agenda?
Yes, Board, I have one. I'd like to add an additional executive session, Ohio Revised Code 121.22G3, conference with an attorney for the public body concerning disputes involving the body that are subject of pending or imminent court action.
Any other? Thank you very much. Any other modifications? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Kretz?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. Graf?
Yes.
Make a motion to approve the January 20, 2016 payroll in the amount of $285,402.54.
Second.
Mr. Kretz?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. Graf?
Yes.
Make a motion to approve the bills in the amount of $213,815.41.
Second.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Kretz?
Yes.
Ms. Graf?
Yes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting held January 4th, 2016.
Second.
Mr. Kretz?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. Graf?
Yes. This time we open the meeting to anyone who would like to speak to the board. 3 minutes. Seeing none. Go on. We have no old business listed, no new business listed. Mr. Zaharian, you're up.
Thank you, Board. First item on the agenda for the administrators request to schedule a special meeting. This will be 2 separate dates if the board would want to schedule it that way. The first would be to discuss the Beavercreek Community Library and some of the options that we've been discussing with the roof, and the second would be to hire 3 firefighters. And then the third meeting request would be a joint township meeting with the city. The city would host the meeting this time. It would be a shorter meeting because it's a part of their work session on February 16th at 5 o'clock, but it would allow discussion between the township trustees and city council in regards to the US 35 Super Street project or proposal.
The joint meeting, you're looking for the 16th of February, correct?
Yes.
And that's at what time?
5 o'clock, and all 4 elected officials that were available for that.
And that's at the city.
Yeah, the city council
Just
chambers.
be about an hour at most. Because
Depending on the
meeting starts at
conversation,
6.
right. They'll have,
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock. Yeah, they will have other items for their work session, so they would put, first thing would be a joint meeting with us to discuss the US 35 project.
Okay. And what are convenient times for the other two? If hiring 3 firefighters, I think we usually do that later in the afternoon so family and friends can come.
If that's available to the board, that would be preferable to us, yes, ma'am.
And I would recommend if we're setting for later, maybe an hour before, meet to discuss the library.
You want to get that
Okay.
done before the end of the month?
So you're saying before our next meeting, you want to start at 12 for the library discussion?
No, have schedule a joint meeting sometime before our next meeting.
Now,
let's put it this way.
I mean,
The hiring of the
the hiring.
firefighters, if we do that at 4, instead of meeting at 3 with the library, is that what you're saying?
No, well, what I'm saying is schedule a special meeting to do both topics, other than our.
Right, I understand, yeah. So on the day of the special meeting, we set the firefighter, whatever,
Yeah.
at 4 o'clock maybe,
Yeah,
and 3 o'clock for
We
the
would
other.
do the library,
Okay,
yeah.
so, which day is a good day? I always leave Mondays open, so I never have a conflict on Mondays. And the end of next week is bad because that's when the conference is. It's almost too late this week, so you wanna do it on the 25th, 26th?
is that okay with you, chief?
Monday, the 25th would be great if
I
you
can't.
were available.
Can't make
I
it?
can't, I have a 2:30 meeting. Which one?
Okay, what about the 26th Tuesday?
We can make that work.
That would be good.
3 o'clock, 4
I
o'clock.
can make that work too.
Okay. It'll be the 26th of January, 3 o'clock for the library, 4 o'clock for the firefighter.
What do you want, how do you want the library discuss
Um,
general business, or do you want to discuss?
Tuesday the 26th.
We can put it under just general discussion on the library roof.
Library facility upgrade necessary,
Facilities.
construct, you know,
The discussion will
that's
be
gonna be the
around,
roof.
so facilities will be fine.
Facilities.
Thank you, board. Next item is the sheriff's biweekly report. This also includes the year-end statistics, starting on page 4 of your packet. This gives you a 3-year comparison, and then starting on page 5 would be the year-end. You see 2016 is blank, because once a month, the sheriff will provide a year-to-date report, which will look very similar to this, and then the biweekly, which starts on page 8, would continue with the same format every 2 weeks.
It looks very good.
I saw our appreciation for formatting and some were very helpful.
Yes.
We generated the report, they supplied the statistics for it, so.
Great.
Oh, so you put them together? Well, whoever did it did an excellent job. It's easy to read, easy to compare.
And if the board would like, we could do something similar to the first report, where it's maybe a little easier to read for the biweekly. If they send it to me in Excel format, I'll be able to make it look a little more like the report starting on
It's
page 4.
easier to read than those whole list of everything.
Okay,
Unless there's something that highlights that you're concerned about, that we need to know about, the summation is sufficient.
The summary is the more important one.
Yeah.
okay.
I saw a note as well that the city requested or the sheriff provided this.
The city requested of the sheriff,
Yes.
the information,
Yes,
other than from us.
No, not from us, directly from the sheriff. Sheriff did provide the same information you're seeing there. It was kind of when we were requesting it to be put as how many calls provided in the unincorporated area, so this report was also sent to the city as well.
And I think what's interesting, and I don't know if the other two had this happen, but in the last month, I've been approached by at least 3 different city employees saying, when can they provide the police protection for the township again? So I guess there's a real interest. My answer is, if you can provide it for the same price, we consider it. I don't know if that's what the others would answer, but
I think there's a couple components. The cost is one component, but then the more important is the coverage.
yes, that's it.
I hate to use the term quality of service, but the same level of service, level of visibility, attention to the unincorporated, and cost.
And it was since I did exactly what you said, that we have 4 dedicated deputies. We know it isn't 24/7, 365 because of other issues, but generally we have someone here doing the patrolling. And when the city was doing it, even though they told me they had a designated one, I said that the designated one was pulled off very often. So it was really here. So that is a concern. Okay, so we have the information. Finance report.
Thank you, Board. On page 13 begins the biweekly report for the Finance Department. Are there any questions?
Very
Thank you,
good.
Board. Next item on your agenda starts on page 16 of your packet, is the Human Resource Department biweekly report. Are there any questions?
What's the anticipated sunset on the Virginia Township fire? Near, 3 months away, 6 months away?
I would say by the end of March.
Pardon me?
Just curious.
By the end of
I'm
March?
guessing by the end of March. It's, at this point, it's, you know, we're in mediation and it's going to be based off of when we can get things scheduled.
The end of March is the anticipated completion of that project.
Right.
Any other questions? Zoning.
Thank you, Board. On page 18 begins the zoning biweekly report.
You've been busy already.
Yes, we are starting to see a lot of single-family dwelling permits come in. So, as noted in the report, it wasn't until March of last year that we reached the number that you see in your packet.
I think what I found interesting is that in the newspaper over the weekend, they had a list of permits in various counties. In Green County, I think it's like 256, of which 96 will be in Green Township. So it tells you a huge proportion of the growth in Green County is taking place in Beavercreek Township.
What was the outcome of the meeting regarding Nathaniel's Grove and the screening, the buffering and screening that the residents were asking, the adjacent residents were asking?
That's the
Executive.
executive session.
Anything else? IT.
Thank you, Board. On page 22 begins the IT biweekly report. Are there any questions?
You did an interim agreement with Mr. Harrison, correct?
That is correct. We have, the board extended his current contract for 60 days. We should have something to you on the February 1st meeting.
Okay.
He was happy just to. Road department.
Thank you, Board. The first item under the road department is proposed purchase request for 2028 Dayton Senior Road. This was the land that we acquired. And starting on page 22 is the budget information, first bullet.
This would be for the passive materials.
Page 24 of the packet.
The Tackett Environmental Services agreement to actually do the abatement.
That's correct. Well, now, we're going to continue to use, as it says in the report to you on page 24, we're going to continue to use the building for a long period of time as essentially a training facility for our fire department. And we'll be moving some of our training materials that are housed here in the lower level and move them to the garage in the house.
they'll remove the hazardous materials before, and then it's safe to do the training. Any
Did it
questions
look
on
like they were gonna set up a barrier chamber? And are they gonna, did I read in here they're not gonna do post-testing?
Yes, they are going to be visual post-testing, yes.
Okay.
Legals reviewed the proposal as far as the debate.
Yeah, because this was originally reviewed, I forget how long ago, it's a
2014.
2014.
It's the same.
When we were looking at purchasing that property as well as the tearing down the house on Indian Ripple Road in the park we purchased up there. So the original contract was reviewed. This is essentially part two of a three-part process. So the first part was the agreement, and then looking at assessing both buildings and then tearing down and removal of the site on Indian Ripple. What you have in front of you today is part two, and then part three would be the removal of the building eventually. They'll come back before you whenever we decide to tear down the building. Take it to the site.
When we tear it down, that's gonna be a fire operation?
It may be.
Man, do I have a motion?
One more question, are we required to get a pre-demolition permit, do we already have that?
We already had that recorded in.
Okay.
Motion's on page 24.
Read the first one.
Okay, I make a motion to approve the proposal from Tackett Environmental for the asbestos abatement and documentation as presented, and to authorize the township administrator to sign for the board.
Second.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Kraus?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
I make a motion to approve purchase request number 00361 to Tackett Environmental for the asbestos abatement in the amount not to exceed $10,000, and to authorize the township administrator to sign for the board.
Second.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Kraus?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes. Why were there two? Why
Rather
were
two
there two
motions.
separate motions?
It's an agreement.
I think one was
One
the
is the proposal and the other
the
one is the
approval of
purchase request.
the scope, and the other one was approval of the amount.
You just, you do it, that's fine. Yes. Make the motion.
Thank you, Board. The next item is not in your packet, but I sent it out separately, and received it on Friday, is the 2015 highway mileage certification.
It's 41.05.
What was it last year?
40.73 or something research.
It went up just a slightly.
Yeah, that's a tiny. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what we need is just a signature on the form.
You have to have a motion saying we approve the certification?
No, just need the
Okay.
certificate.
You normally do, don't they?
We normally approve the mileage amount.
Make a motion.
Or is that the report we get from the county?
You normally do.
Just read those.
Yes.
So I'll make a motion to approve the ODOT total certified mileage at the end of calendar year 2015 as presented.
Second.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Kraus?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Thank you, Board. Next item is on page 29, is the road department's bi-weekly report. Are there any questions?
Fire.
Thank you, Board. On page 30, has the fire department agenda. First item on the agenda is a purchase request for statistics training for the fire officers. Purchase justification starts on page 31. The chief's available to answer any questions or regards that are not addressed in the budget justification.
There was a number one, request for permission to hire firefighter.
Yeah, we already did handle that.
The other-
Yeah, that was a crossover with Mr. Zaharias, request for the special meeting.
Oh, okay, so that's it here. All right.
Unless you have any additional questions on it.
No. There'll be three. Two of the part-time who have completed their paramedics and an individual who is a lateral-ish transfer
Yes, ma'am,
to fulfill an empty spot that we have not filled up to this point.
that's correct.
Statistics training for fire.
Thank you, Board. Purchase justification starts on page 31.
I have a couple of questions, I guess, Chief. So,
Yes, sir.
just to confirm, so this training is, I'll call it more centered or more focused on what would be relevant to running a fire organization
Absolutely.
versus taking a coursework at Sinclair or Wright State.
Absolutely. There's kind of three benefits to this. The first is a rudimentary understanding of statistics. So they won't get even as much as if they went and took a quarter down at Sinclair. But they'll get some important distinctions. For example, what is a mean versus a median versus a mode? How are they relevant? What is a percentile? And percentile is probably the most important concept because that ties into standards of cover and how we evaluate our service delivery levels. The second thing they'll get is, part of this is learning how to use our own data. So how you can use it from Firehouse or from Excel, how you can pull it out, how you can look at it, understand what's good or bad data, be able to manipulate it. And then the third thing, and actually one that I found most interesting, but maybe above most of the folks' heads at this point, it's something that they'll grow into, is how to ask good questions. So going beyond what is our average response time into more sophisticated questions as to what different variables can affect our ability for service delivery, things like that. So it'll help them craft the questions based off of what they see. So okay, that leads to an interesting, a result that I wasn't expecting. How do I narrow it down and find out what it really means? That sort of thing. So definitely fire service oriented and directly.
Have you identified, essentially, this is all officers who may participate in this?
Yes, sir. It'll be all of our lieutenants through the deputy chiefs.
Who's teaching?
It's Fire Stats is the name of the company. Paul Rottenberg is the instructor. He teaches this same class for the Center for Public Safety Excellence, which is the accrediting body for fire service in the United States. What he'll be doing is taking what most people would go and get at a generic level so that they could do their own thing for their fire department. He'll come here, he'll teach it for our entire staff, and he'll use our data. So it's all goes into this class.
So it's a 3-day course with 1 day per shift?
It's actually a 4-day course, and they'll be in all 4 days. The first 3 days are the traditional statistics part, and then there's a 4th day which is strictly on budgeting and how statistics apply for budgeting, forecasting, depreciation, and some of those sorts of things.
As a side question, do you have a tentative schedule?
We're looking to get it approved now so that we can get it scheduled for September. So that's about how far out he's scheduled.
If you could, I would be interested in auditing that.
Oh, absolutely.
I know the trustees would as well, but it'd be interesting.
I'm fondness for statistics.
I can sit quietly in the back of the room.
We'll even give you a computer and let you log in. So yeah, absolutely. I don't think that'd be a problem at all.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve purchase request 05142 Fire Stats LLC for custom on-site statistics training in the amount of $8,800 and authorize township administrator to sign for the board.
Second.
Mr. Prince?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. Grant?
Thank you, Board. The next purchase request starts on page 33 of your packet for the purchase justification. This is the hose bed modification, something that we've discussed off and on last year, and this was a project that was moved to this year that did not get completed in 15. This would fix our issue of the,
Unintended hose deployment.
thank you.
Had we designed the original, or were we in on the design that we found out didn't work as well as it should have?
I think it was a combination. One of the key parts of the design issue that we ran into based off of the factories, and we basically signed off on it, is the shape of the tank, if I remember correctly, limits how the configuration can occur in the back. And they had an idea for how everything could be placed in there. What ended up happening, and I don't have a diagram for you, but basically there's two cutout. If you think of a rectangle or a rectangular cube that would be the hose bed, there's two cutouts at the bottom that cause it to be kind of Y-shaped, which allows the hose to sag in towards the middle as the vehicle drives and it settles. And that sagging is what created, we believe, the essential ramp to allow the hose to deploy unexpectedly. And so what this will do is provide a flat, even bottom it'll sit on, which is the traditional layout, which is what all of our engines in the past have had. And then it puts all of our smaller hose on just very narrow single stacked loads on either side. So it keeps it in a more modular configuration as opposed to kind of an odd shaped configuration. Mr. Parks had anything else to add?
I think I'm with this design now. It's changed a couple times.
It's been a challenge to get to it.
We need to reappropriate first and then.
I have one question for you,
Yes, sir.
as far as the, which engine is this going on?
It'll be all four of the Rosenbauers. They all have the exact same design
Okay.
issue in the hose beds.
And are any of those engines to be replaced within the next 5 years?
No, sir. They all have 10 to 15-year lifespan left on them.
Remaining?
Yes.
Did I read in here that,
You purchased these 2010?
I think they went in service 11 and 12, if I remember correctly. Yes, sir.
and did I read in here too that it automatically becomes part of the warranty?
The plumbing part, I think, is part of the plumbing warranty, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
All the other work, I assume, is warranted as much as the rest of the engine is, but I don't think there's much left on the side of it. We did end up going with All American in their design because and this is what we went round and round on our alternative design, is the engineers from Rosenbauer would not sign off on some of the other modifications structurally that would have had to have been made for some of the other design concepts. So this one has been signed off on by Rosenbauer at the factory, and the work will be done through All American, the manufacturer. So it will fall under whatever warranty we have to do. But the plumbing specific, I recall, is part of that.
Well, and actually, structural warranty, we still got 10 years.
Okay, so.
Reappropriate and
Yeah, on page 34, we should have a resolution.
Yeah. Read the first two, then stop.
The first is all one thing.
Okay. Whereas the Board of Trustees, Beavercreek Township, Greene County, State of Ohio, moved for approval of the following. Whereas to reappropriate from account 2192-930-930-5999 contingencies fire fund to account 2192-220-740-5600 machinery, equipment, and furniture apparatus in the amount of $49,000.
That was the motion.
Second.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Prince?
Yes.
Ms. Graf?
Yes.
Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees, Beavercreek Township, Greene County, Ohio, favorably passed the above resolution. Okay, now follow right into it.
He's making all the motions tonight. This afternoon. Motion.
Make a motion to approve the following purchase request 07328 to All American Fire Equipment, Inc. for fire engine hose bed modifications in the amount of $41,344, and to authorize the township administrator to sign for the board.
Second.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Prince?
Yes.
Ms. Grant?
Yes.
Thank you, board. Next item, purchase request starts on page 35. This is a purchase request for fire engine lighting and striping.
This is additional, over and above the
Yes,
minimum.
ma'am. We have the NFPA minimum, or maybe slightly above that, with the number of calls that we run on busy streets, specifically 675 and 35, but also realistically North Fairfield, New Jersey, Trayvine, Pentagon. Part of our lane blocking strategy involves putting an engine at an angle in at least the lane of traffic that's affected. And what we've discovered is that when the engine goes at that angle, you lose some of the visibility of the rear lights. And so we're adding some additional striping and lighting to the sides to help brighten it up and hopefully avoid a similar incident.
So it would just be striping, it wouldn't be lights that.
Yeah, there are emergency lights and striping both. That's the two parts of this particular request.
First motion's on page 35. Second
I'll
motion.
make a motion to approve the following purchase request 07991 to Danco for quantity 4 fire engine reflective striping upgrades in the amount of $1,500. That's into the town of Beavercreek.
Correct.
Amount of $1,500 and authorize township administrator to sign for the board.
Second.
Mr. Prince?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. Grant?
Make a motion to approve following purchase request 07990 to All American Fire Equipment for quantity 4 fire engine emergency lighting upgrades in the amount of $5,724 to authorize the township administrator to sign for the board.
Second.
Mr. Prince?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. Grant?
Yes.
Thank you, Board. And I'll just point out, since we've discussed this in the past, the initial purchase request for $1,500 typically wouldn't come before the board, but since it's part of a larger project, the project itself exceeds the $2,500 limit, so we include both parts.
Appreciate that, Chief.
Thank you, board. Next item is a purchase request for blue card training. That's purchase request justification starts on page 37. This will take the rest of the department up to the level of myself and the rest of the officers, including one officer, acting officer, who went through the class already that was going to take the place of an officer that is retiring.
Actually, this is the instructor portion. We'll bring the training portions next time.
Yeah, this will be for the instructors.
It'll be one for each shift, 3 instructors.
Yes, ma'am.
Could you articulate how this benefits the taxpayer that wrote the check to us that we write the check to?
It provides a systematic method for emergency incident management. So scene management is a big part of the command process. And in our organization, it starts with the apparatus officer, basically the person who's in charge of riding on a single piece of equipment, all the way up through the incident commander, which could often include either Mr. Zahari or myself on a large scale incident. But make sure that we're all using a common terminology and a common vocabulary, a common methodology for how we approach an incident, how we communicate emergency traffic, what we consider important emergency traffic, so that we can make sure that A, we're meeting the emergency scene objectives that we're trying to accomplish, that is putting the fire out, life safety, loss preservation or loss conservation. And it also facilitates, if there is a true, what we're learning, redefining as emergency traffic, that is, say, a firefighter mayday, that we have the ability to easily understand who's involved, where they're at, and be able to locate them and extricate them from destruction.
Do police use the same or similar type?
In my experience, the police have a much looser incident management style than the fire service. We kind of run into that periodically when we do our joint trainings, for example, the active shooter training. The fire department incident command structure is usually a lot tighter, and we attribute that most often when we talk about it informally. I don't think we've ever sat down and done a true analysis on it. We work in teams all the time, so the apparatus crew is a team. Those teams come together and work in either, to borrow the NIMS parlance, task forces or strike groups. So we're used to taking individuals, putting them in a group situation and working under some sort of consolidated leadership. Our understanding of the police department is they operate individually much more often. So they have one person in a cruiser and they're used to being fairly self-sufficient on scene. So when they all come together, there's less of a defined hierarchy than we're used to.
Do Beavercreek Police and Sheriff use different protocol?
They technically all use NIMS, which is the large-scale incident, so type 1, 2, 3, 4 size incidents under the NIMS structure. I don't know what they use in basically the smaller type 4 and type 5 incident types, which is what Blue Card is designed for, which for us is, say, the residential structure fire, the major car crash, maybe a technical rescue and that type of incidents. So I don't know what their system is for that size.
So if you have an incident at Pentagon and North Fairfield, or an incident at Orchard and Davidson, whose protocol takes precedent?
If we're working well together, typically it'll be ours. There's a provision in the Ohio Revised Code that basically for all emergencies puts the fire chief of the jurisdiction overall in charge, including over law enforcement. So if it falls in any of those categories, it'll be ours. And then we work through a unified command system where we would have a command officer from the law enforcement agency or agencies with us in our command post to help manage all of our resources, including those LE resources. If it's not a fire incident, say it's a barricaded subject or a hostage situation, something like that, where we don't have jurisdiction, we would then fall into theirs typically. But a lot of times that's a matter that's worked out by the senior officers on the scene. And with all of the local jurisdictions that we work with on a regular basis, we have a relationship where we can do that. That has not always been that way with all. We've had fire officers arrested in the past. So it's not perfectly seamless, but right now we're in a good relationship with both the county and the city law enforcement agencies, so we don't have those sorts of problems. And actually that's one of the biggest reasons we do our active shooter training, is it gives us once a year we come together and we manage a large scale for us incident jointly and try and work out those kind of bugs.
Is there an element of train the trainer between, when you train this larger group, then as far as the interaction with CERT and having them on the common vocabulary or protocol?
CERT may be secondarily, but there will actually be a subgroup of the auxiliary members who are part of this training. We will be bringing a second set of purchase requests, one for our dispatchers, because they do our over-the-radio emergency communications, and the other for that subset of auxiliary members who are going to be what we call field incident technicians. They're going to be the command support staff at the incidents. In a large city, a fire chief, and even at the battalion chief, district chief level, will typically have a driver who also acts as an aide on scenes. We obviously don't have the staffing to do that, so what the auxiliary members would be able to do is once they arrive on scene, they would be able to support incident command, taking notes, assisting with communication, documentation, and these sorts of things.
So last question, because this is a big jump on it.
Yes.
Is this curing a deficiency that we have? Or?
Yes, we kind of twofold. One is it's a fundamental overhaul. We've had an incident management system in place since I've been on the organization. We have not done major upgrades to it since the NIMS upgrades, and what they've there's a lot of industry best practices out there that our current system does not, does not address. So what this will do is take those industry best practices and move our incident management system up to that level. So the reason we're putting the money into this, it is a certification process. We could pick and choose pieces and parts of it if we wanted to and kind of do an ad hoc implementation, but we think it's important to get the full training from the source, to get the certification, have everybody held to that same level. And in the end, it's important, especially important for us, because our organization is kind of flat enough as far as rank construction goes, is firefighters will often ride up in an officer's position. Lieutenants will often ride up in a battalion chief's position. So it's important for us to have the depth so that anybody that's acting in any of those roles understands the communication, can effectively operate with the communication, understands the goals and objectives that are set. So yeah, it's basically taking an old system that needs a lot of work. And it was one of the things that was addressed in the performance audit in 2014, and giving us a solid structure, foundation to build off of for all of our folks for consistency and effectiveness on things.
I said that was the last question, but it really wasn't.
That's all right.
One last question, and then, so for either for this purchase or for the subset to come that we referenced before, is there no grant money that's available for this?
There probably is, but the issue with finding grant funding is, one, we're not a good grant source because of our solid financial standing, or a good grant applicant because our good financial standing, and for the grants that we would potentially be eligible for, say the Assistance of Firefighters grant, the time frame doesn't line up with when we're trying to accomplish this. So we have half of our department trained, we'd like to get the other half trained and be able to implement the incident management manual changes that go along with it. And if we were to apply and wait for grant funding, that would really elongate the process and I think minimize its effectiveness.
Perhaps then we can auxiliary start on grant search for their piece of it, because they should be able to prove financial need.
Yeah, we could certainly do that.
Just so we can start that process.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That was it. Mr. Roberts, you have any questions?
Well, I just have a comment. The purchase request today is for the instructor phase, correct?
That is correct.
So we're actually getting ahead of the game by having our own instructors.
Yes, sir.
So this will be beneficial down the road. What's the CE requirement for the instructors annually?
I don't recall the numbers. It's a 3-year continuing ed process, if I remember correctly, but I don't remember the number of hours. And I believe it's, I think, so I could be wrong here, but I think it's the same as all of us that are going through the process. So we all have the same CE requirement as the instructors. They just have the additional instruction that they receive to be able to teach it correctly.
Was 5.8.3, is that the $3,500 per year to maintain the certification? Does that include the CE or is the CE in addition?
I brought the electronic version and it timed out. Let me answer your questions. I apologize.
So 5.8.3.
That very well is likely it,
That's what I.
because
Yeah,
that's what
that's what
they,
I- yeah.
Yeah.
that's what they would be looking for.
If it's a recurring credit.
And that would
So
be instead of
if you're approving the 13.5, you're really.
Yes, sir.
13.5 plus another
369.
10.5.
Yeah, I don't recall how many hours that is specifically, but that would be the cost for it, materials.
And then if I read also in here that by doing this over the next 3 years, since we'll be able to do our own training, we're going to save.
Yes,
So
sir.
the township will save as a result of this. overall.
Correct. And that was the point of sending for the instructors to get the training. We could still hire the officers. We brought in instructors and had them run the course. When we saw what they did, how they did it, we realized it's something we were capable of doing if we had the certified people to do it. So this is getting certified people to save the cost of having the class.
And by becoming certified ourselves to instruct, any opportunity for us to help with other jurisdictions for them to get their training through us?
I've heard mixed answers on that. I've not seen anything in writing saying yes or no. Conceivably, yes, our instructors would be the same. We don't know if there's any licensing issues with the regional training center, which is down in Loveland Sims or not. So if we can, more likely what I would think is, instead of us getting into the business of teaching, if we're running a class and say a Fairborn or a Kettering or senior officer needed it, they'd be able to sit in. I think that's probably likely, but I don't think we'll get off and running classes to either make a profit or get
The opportunity to be a good neighbor.
Yes, sir, I believe so.
I remember when Mrs. Harriet was going through the classes, and your statements were that it was excellent, excellent information and instruction. And what made you think it is so much better than what you already had?
Well, I think it goes back to what the chief went back to in all our incident command classes, and I'm an incident command instructor, and I can teach all the way up to the highest level, which is 800. Those classes are focused on the major incidents, the hurricanes, the tornadoes. This class rethinks how we approach it and breaks it down on what we will see, or what those guys will see as company officers sitting in that seat, and focus on those details. And to go back to that methodology, starting to hear it on the radio, how the guys are approaching calls, and they're approaching it much like to the training, where it's everybody is saying the same thing. The idea is to reduce the radio traffic, but then again, get the information across as well. So we're really focusing on the smaller incidents that we deal with on a day-to-day coverage, the larger car crashes on the roads or highways, and then our residential fires like we had last week. So,
Now, for to follow up on that, following also what Mr. President said, we do work with both the sheriff's office and the police department. Would it be beneficial to ask if they would like to have some of their people sit in on the classes once we get to talk?
this focuses more on fire department, fire ground operations. So it breaks down from residential, small, medium, large homes to commercial to our large big box facilities, including manufacturing. So will police have a role in that? Yes, they would have a role, but it goes back to what the chief says, their role would be to work in the unified command post, whether it's the chief officer or the battalion chief in charge, or our lieutenant running up as the battalion chief, to have that interaction when it comes to road closures, potentially evacuations. But the class really focuses on fire. The other thing what we're starting to see is a lot of the NIASH reports, which is the reports that review firefighter fatalities on incidents, and they are now starting to suggest that blue card, they're actually saying it in some of the reports, is that you need to focus more on incident management of the routine calls as opposed to incident management on the larger incidents. Now, by federal standards, every firefighter and police officer on the street has to have incident command level up to 200, 300 and 400 for command positions, essentially like department heads or chiefs, and then 700 and 800 for firefighters and police officers. So there's a basic understanding of how incident command works. What Blue Card does is take that information and focuses on those events that we deal on a routine basis.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve purchase request 08041 to Blue Card Command for 3 Blue Card instructors tuition in the amount of $13,500 to authorize the township administrator to sign for the board.
Second.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Kreis?
Yes.
Ms. Grant?
Yes.
I'll continue, we make a motion to approve purchase request 08042 to PNC Visa for 3 instructors' travel and lodging expenses in an amount not to exceed $4,000, and to authorize the township administrator to sign for the board.
Second.
Where is the training held?
Here, on the side.
So
Oh,
it shouldn't be
I'm
any
sorry.
lodging, it's just the
I'm sorry,
training.
the instructor's training is held at, is it Las Vegas or is it? Phoenix, Arizona, sorry. The final Blue Card training for all the crews will be held here at Blue Card.
I just
I'm
found
sorry.
But they- what this next motion is.
That would have been a lot of money to have the training here for
Yes.
And no. Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Kretz?
Yes.
Ms. Grant?
Yes.
And finally, make a motion to approve purchase request 08046 to 3 TBD employees to be determined. For meal reimbursements in an amount not to exceed $800 and to authorize the administrator to sign for the board. I run for a meeting.
Second.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Kretz?
Yes.
Ms. Grant?
Yes.
Thank you, and again, the $800 would typically come because it's part of the regular package. The one thing that I don't think was included in the packet here, I'll make sure it gets included when we do the final training packages. This is taking the place, again, of what has traditionally been one of our largest training expenditures, which is FDIC. So last year, we committed our FDIC funds and our fire chiefs, FRI funds to this training. We're looking to do that again this year. So this is our major offset to what would have otherwise been a large training expense.
As usual, your graphics are very delightful in the packet.
The next item would be the biweekly report, which starts on page 30 now.
I'm not sure I understand all the ups and downs of what you're doing. That's why I thought maybe you would be teaching the statistics and how you demonstrate them.
No, ma'am, not
You are a
effective
master
at
at
that.
this.
Thank you. And this is, again, we're working on the last item on the agenda that did not make it in the packet, which is the 2015 summary. I'm just getting all the formulas rewritten for 2015 calendar year as opposed to the 26 period. So as soon as that's done, you'll get that, and that'll be our first one we'll present to the city when we go to attend the first one.
I really think that the bi-weekly map is extremely instructional, and it wouldn't hurt to have all council members get those on a regular bi-weekly basis in their personal email. That would be my preference, because it's so absolutely graphic as to where the incidents take place, where the money of the fire department and personnel in the fire department is deployed most effectively, efficiently, and most often. So it's just something that is a good reminder every 2 weeks.
Yes, ma'am. And our statistics, we're actually redrawing a couple of the boundaries so that we can accurately determine whether the incidents are incorporated or unincorporated. And reports, once we get that set, we'll include that breakdown both for the board and for city council.
The only thing that this picture doesn't show is which is mutual aid, which isn't, but I don't think that's critical as much as where the incidents take place.
I could zoom it out a little bit to get to mutual aid, but then you lose a little bit of the detail for us.
And that's fine. I know about you, I like those things. Just like I like that little incident thing of the map showing how that arguing U-turns might work. Any questions on the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Board. That's all I have.
Legal advisor,
Lindsay, you have something?
he said he doesn't have it ready yet, he is
Okay.
still working on it.
The cities?
The 2015, so.
Oh, yeah, that's correct. It's a little more complex than I expected it would be, so it's taking a little bit longer.
So it was not proper today, it will be in the near future.
Yeah, and it's actually, it's the foundation for the annual report, so it's definitely in the process.
Legal advisor,
Nothing.
trustees,
Just a couple things. I had the opportunity to meet with Base Commander Colonel Villiers last week. He welcomed the new mayor of the city. He had very good things to say as far as the working relationship with Beavercreek Township, fire and EMS, as far as mutual aid. He was appreciative of that.
Thank you, sir.
That good relationship. Alex, I know you're putting together the meeting with ODOT.
Yes.
Hopefully for the 17th. And so several of the stakeholders are very interested in that Super Street and would like to have, if the opportunity is there, to have a preview of the materials before the meeting versus, so they can digest it a little bit. So if that's a, I don't know if that's a, you can get that in a packet formation or something that you can send out to that distribution group.
You sent them, well, you sent us in your end of week report.
I think he's fine tuning that.
Yeah, what ODOT's trying to do by the, hopefully before the 16th, so we also can take a look at it before our joint meeting. ODOT plans to have updated drawings on how it would look in the current overlay or within the footprint of Orchard and Factory Road and US 35, as well as potentially having some animated traffic patterns, as Ms. Graff has indicated, the one they showed last week at the Township Association dinner. But this would focus on what it would look like at Factory and Orchard. Tentatively, we have discussed having a stakeholders meeting on the 17th here in the morning. So I'm hoping to get that information before that so we can take a look at it so that not only the City Council and Township Trustees on the 16th, but also the stakeholders on the 17th will have the opportunity to see it and then bring any questions in.
Any illustrations that they have when they did the last presentation package for the overall conversion of those intersections, they did kind of an at-grade 3D illustration of what the visibility would be like, say perhaps from the site station looking across to the Chevrolet dealership, or what any obstruction, or from the site station looking down to the factory. So what I've tried to convey to folks is that there doesn't appear that there would be any at-grade obstruction as far as view. There would be the same right-of-way acquisition as though they were doing the major project that they had been pursuing. So that the right-of-way wouldn't be any different than the creek on right-of-way would not be any less or more necessarily than what they were going to do for the overall highway project, but that there would be no at-grade obstruction.
Right, except for the extra signals, but that's not that.
Correct. But as far as there's no overpass.
No, there's no overpass that will raise the cars above the car dealerships, so everything will stay essentially at grade for the businesses along those.
There was a concern that there is going to be banking on those looms. So as far as that they would be banked, that they wouldn't be flat. So,
Oh, I see.
so I think if there's an illustration of that, or at least address the question.
Yes. The looms at, currently at I-4 bypass, Route 4 bypass in Butler County, the two looms that I've seen are at grade. They are looking at all the right-of-way acquisition to be done for the Super Street project, as well as potentially 15, 20 years down the road, even longer potentially, if this is a significant answer to the problems that we're seeing in those intersections. They're going to have the right-of-way purchase for both projects.
And if you can also just ask Keith to bring to that presentation some detail as far as the, Ms. Graff had asked about transponders, as far as being able to control the lights, but also equally important to that is the sensor technology that was discussed that can detect a road vehicle that is not braking in sufficient time, delays the signals.
Okay.
Mr. Robbins? Gather for the next meeting. Any questions? Fiscal officer.
We have the request for the advances, it was in your packets.
Page 43.
County auditor.
I need a motion. Mr. Robbins, what this does is what has happened in the past, that generally happens, if we don't request advances, the county auditor collects all the tax money, bills in the ground, January 20th probably, due in February 20th, and then after he collects, at this point, collects it all, then in one fell swoop gives us a whole bunch. It's the county's money till they send us what we get, and they collect the interest. If we get the advances as they, it don't be 75%, they don't give us 90% at that point of what they collected. And we have it in our bank account, and we can get the minuscule interest that it might be, but it's ours rather than county. So that's what this is. Would you like to do
I'll
this?
make a motion to adopt the following resolution. Whereas the Board of Trustees of Beavercreek Township, Greene County, State of Ohio, met in regular session on the above date and move for approval of the following. Whereas the Board of Trustees of Beavercreek Township are in favor of Ms. Christie L. Aaron's as the elected fiscal officer of Beavercreek Township in Greene County, Ohio, requesting from Greene County Auditor an advance of payment of the current collection of taxes assessed and collected for and in behalf of Beavercreek Township for the ensuing settlements in calendar year 2016 as provided by law. And whereas,
Second.
Second.
and whereas the Board of Trustees of Beavercreek Township do hereby authorize Ms. Aaron's to request those advances, those advance draws for calendar year 2016 from Greene County Auditor.
Second again to be safe.
Mr. Kraft?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of Beavercreek Township, Greene County, Ohio favorably pass the above resolution.
Another resolution.
The second one is for inventory.
Whereas the Board of Trustees of Beavercreek Township, Greene County, State of Ohio, move for the approval of the following. Whereas the Ohio Revised Code, Section 505.04 states that the Board of Township Trustees shall make an inventory on the second Monday of January each year of all the materials, machinery, tools, and other township supplies in its possession. The inventory shall be a public record, and shall be made in duplicate, one copy of which shall be fixed with the fiscal officer of the board, and one copy with the county engineer. Whereas the Board of Trustees of Beavercreek Township has hereby defined materials, machinery, tools, and other supplies as non-expendable, and which have a cost of at least $500 as a single unit. Whereas the Board of Trustees of Beavercreek Township does hereby request that anything owned by Beavercreek Township that fits the definition above be included in the Beavercreek Township inventory list.
Second.
Mr. Kraft?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of Beavercreek Township, Greene County, Ohio favorably pass the above resolution.
Last portion of our meeting will be a request for executive sessions.
Should I read all three? Make a motion that we move into executive session under Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22G1 to consider the employment, dismissal, promotion, and compensation of a public employee. Also under Ohio Revised Code 121.22G8 to consider confidential information related to the marketing plans, specific business strategy, production techniques, trade secrets, or personal financial statements of an applicant for economic development assistance or to negotiation with other political subdivisions respecting request for economic development assistance, and also under Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22G3, conferences with an attorney for the public body concerning disputes involving the public body that are subject to pending or imminent court action.
Second.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Kraft?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.